Good afternoon, everybody. We will start with this 5th episode of UNDAC Talks. Today we will look at a mission, an UNDAC mission that happened recently, a 7.1 magnitude earthquake in Mexico on the 19th of September. And we'll have the UNDAC team leader here with us. Welcome everybody to this 5th episode of UNDAC Talks, which is the way that we want to reach out from Geneva, the Field Coordination Support Section, to the UNDAC network to share experiences and knowledge with the network, by the network. Remember, this is the 5th episode. We had earlier episodes around assessment and analysis, around remote sensing, around disaster waste, and the last time dealing with the private sector and the role of the private sector in emergencies. So this is episode number 5, and I'm happy that today we will look at a mission, and recent mission, as I mentioned, of the UNDAC team. We were going to have Winston Chang here talk with Juan Pablo O'Farrill, who was the team leader in Mexico. Unfortunately, Winston is busy now on an UNDAC mission in Iraq, where we also had a recent earthquake, so he is not there. I will be there for your host. My name is Peter Muller. I greet you from Geneva, from the Palais des Nations, Field Coordination Support Section of OCHA. And I'm very happy to have with us today, on the other side of the Atlantic actually, Juan Pablo O'Farrill, who is an OCHA disaster response advisor in Mexico. He is also an UNDAC member since, I believe, if I'm correct, since 2010, and he is an UNDAC team leader as well. He was team leader also in Haiti last year after Hurricane Matthew in that part of the world. And when we had the earthquake in Mexico, obviously we looked at Juan Pablo as one of our young, bright response stars in the Americas. So very happy to have him today. Juan Pablo, I hope you're well. I know it's a little bit earlier, but your day has started as well. Welcome to UNDAC Talks.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for having me here, for the kind invitation. Yes, I will. I'm looking forward now to share with you the experience that we had here in Mexico after this UNDAC mobilization. I have prepared a presentation, if I may. I will share it with you now.
Yes. Why don't you tell us a bit what happened and when it happened, and how the mission got started and you got involved in all of that?
Yes. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, in fact, as you know, as you just mentioned, I'm a National Disaster Response Advisor. I'm the OCHA presence here in Mexico, and after this earthquake struck, I was called to support the UN system in Mexico and promote this and help with this UNDAC mission. Well, I must start by saying I would like to share my screen, if I may, because I have something here for you to see.
Yeah, that's good. Put your screen on what do you call it? Big view. What do you call it? Screen.
Screen to share screen.
Yeah, and then what do you call that?
Yes, I'm looking
full screen.
Same. I lost the main screen because I did something wrong here. Very awfully sorry about this.
We'll cut that out, Juan Pablo. That's all right.
Okay.
We'll edit it out when we put it online.
Yeah. Well. Okay. You're sharing this monitor. Okay. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Oh, the PowerPoint.
I was seeing the PowerPoint.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. If you put it on full screen, on screen view, then.
Thank you. That's it. That's it. Very good.
There we go.
Take
it away. Just to say to the audience, Juan Pablo is going to run a short presentation, and at the end you can ask questions through the chat function as well. So then we'll monitor that, or we'll facilitate that after the presentation.
Okay.
I think we're all good. Look, beautiful picture. Juan Pablo is there with the flags and the tie. Take it away. Over to you.
All right. Well, let me get started. So yes, you know, this story didn't start on the 19th of September. In fact, Mexico had a very exceptional conjuncture in terms of disasters this year. In fact, August and September were the most, well, I will say, harsh months in last years in terms of impact of disasters. I presented this slide in which you can see between August and September we had seven impacts of tropical cyclones, from which 3 were hurricanes. And I would say this is pretty exceptional, and this is of course related to climate change, including these 2 major earthquakes. In fact, previously to the one that struck Mexico 19th of September and the one that mobilized this UNDAC mission, we had another one, a major one, 8.2 Richter scale on 7th of September. And in fact, I was leading an UNDAC mission in Haiti at that moment because of a tropical storm and then cyclone Irma. And then I was called to redeploy to my country to assist on this. This 8.2 earthquake happened in southeast Mexico, very near to the Guatemalan border, and it was the most strong earthquake in the last 100 years. And this, including the 8.5 earthquake in Mexico City, that, as you remember, killed at least 10,000 people and created a huge mobilization in terms of user operations. But then, as I mentioned, previously to these cyclones and then the impact of this first earthquake that impacted Chiapas and the other state at the east of that one, Oaxaca, happened this other earthquake. 19th of September, very shallow, very not in the sea, very close to urban population, and this, of course, created lots of damage, and I will show you a little bit what is in terms of impact in detail. But just to mention that were 5 states were badly affected, besides the 2 affected previously by the 7th of September earthquake. So this is for the context. So this is a slide that we elaborated as OCHA, in which you have much more detail about it. The most impacted zone was Mexico City, in which most of the people were killed. This is a slide of the 23rd of September. But just to mention, at the end, nearly 400 people were recorded as killed, and of course, besides Mexico City, the most affected area was the state from which the epicenter was located, which is the state of Morelos. All this to say there was a great challenge in terms of impact for the civil protection, for the national authorities, for all people that worked on disaster assistance here, because they were already tired, they were already submitted to lots of stress when this earthquake struck the country. So this UNDAC mission was called by the UNRC. This is important to mention. The RC at that moment was in New York, because as you know, 19th of September corresponded with the 72nd General Assembly. And we had, of course, as all good disasters happened when the RC was not there. Then we had an interim RC, and then, of course, this was an exceptional situation in which somehow helped to mobilize more fast the relief. In fact, at the National Assembly was the Foreign Minister of Mexico, the RC was there, and they will have the talks and negotiation and advice at the highest level very, very fast. So we have here a photo of the team. that came to Mexico. We agreed with the RC to deploy 2 user experts, of course, being an earthquake, and 2 humanitarian assessment experts, an expert on humanitarian coordination, and I have a strong support from OCHA ROLAC in terms of information management. A regional disaster response advisor was deployed here as well. And this is interesting because we have a mix, a great support from UE colleagues, from specifically 3 structural engineers from the European Civil Protection that did a great job, that worked with us hand on hand. It was, I will mention that later, we had a good practice in terms of cooperation and work, joint work with the European Union. So this team was deployed fast because the RC agreed to request this few hours after the earthquake, and we were working the next day on the 20th on very specific things that I will mention a little bit later. So this was a glance of how it happened in terms of mobilization and in terms of context.
Right. Sure. Okay, that's clear, Juan Pablo. Must have been a little bit more hectic than you presented now. So then, for those of you who don't know, then if something like this happens, earthquakes in particular, we also get in touch with the OCHA offices, with the government. And then the first step is to have some kind of terms of reference with the country and with the resident coordinator and with the OCHA office to sort of have the first guidance for the team as you have presented here. So what was the terms of reference, Juan Pablo? Can you tell a bit about that?
Yes, as you know, Mexico is a highly little country, lots of capacities, lots of experience, and this was very important because we have to be very clear on the scope of the mission, the reach of the mission, the activities that we were meant to carry out, and of course elaborate this with the government. Even though we were mobilized by the UN resident coordinators to support the UN system and the humanitarian actors here, it was very, very important to establish liaison, and why not starting to talking to the government and see what could be the added value of this mission for them. But and of course, this terms of reference I'm going to share with you on the objectives of that were very, very useful for government, and I will mention that a little bit further. What were the main activities that we established as terms of reference? In fact, what UNDAC does, work on coordination, information management, and the humanitarian assessment. This I will mention something that was a little bit particular about it, because we didn't undertake any assessments, formally speaking, because Mexico has lots of capacities to do that. This was a disaster. I would say a team leader from user operations put this in a very, very interesting way. He said, Pablo, you know, this is of course a big tragedy for the country, which was. But it wasn't a disaster, in fact, because for a 24 million people city, and with the size of Mexico, 38 collapsed buildings, and related to the capacity of the country, we saw very fast that the capacities of the country were not overwhelmed at all. But we saw with civil protection a great opportunity to observe and advise in real time on every critical aspect of the response. And this, I will mention, this is very important. I would like to highlight that, because it wasn't a preparedness mission, but it wasn't a hardcore, I will say, UNDAC mission either. It was between of them. In fact, we were there advising on coordination. And this, very important, because we have access to all the coordination centers, to all the critical information that Mexico had in terms of user operation. We have our 2 experts, UNDAC experts, working with them real time, advising and observing what things could be improved from the national response. We did the same in information management. We were working closely with civil protection authorities and both local level and federal level, and seeing what kind of products they elaborated, I would say the quality of them, the information flow, and then we had a great impact doing that because I will mention as later as well. As the emergency moved over, we had impact in terms of improving those systems, and then mobilization of humanitarian assistance. In fact, we knew because it was an earthquake that shelter will be a great issue. We had lots of people in shelters, a great number of houses damaged, and then this, of course. We saw that this will be something very important to keep on site and advice in terms of international standards mostly. And then another activity important is the assessment of structural damage. We were working closely through the EU structural engineers, observing and advising on this very, very important aspect of the response. And then here we had great impact as well because they were at the highest level with national authorities working on systems and how to improve them in terms of structural damage and assessment on that sense. So there were the terms of reference agreed with government, and they felt very comfortable with that, and they saw a great opportunity for us to have an external view, a neutral view of the national response real time, and they were interested to know what could be improved and listen to us when all this happened in real time.
Great. Yeah, let me just unmute. Great. So this was the terms of reference. How you have a little title there. Why would UNDAC be useful? So how did it work? How useful is that for the government and for the responders?
Of course. Yeah. In fact, we established these terms of reference the first day of the mission. So we were looking forward to see if this could work, in fact, and see how could we have an added value on this agreement. And here, of course, these terms of reference led to us to somehow this kind of I'm enumerating here the positive aspects and the added value of the mission. I mentioned that this analysis was, in fact, whilst the response was being done. And this is very important because when you simulate, when you run exercises, there's some aspects of the reality that maybe are not present there. But here we saw what happened. And then this was a great opportunity to create, to innovate in terms of UNDAC missions, to have that space. Then I think that besides the work and the added value that we have in terms of the national response, or the official governmental response, we have a great impact providing services to humanitarian actors here. Mexico is not a country that calls for humanitarian assistance often. We have lots of UN agencies working here. In fact, after Colombia, Mexico is the country that has the biggest UN presence, 23 agencies working here, and of course, regional NGOs. We have very important NGOs based here in sub-regional or regional headquarters, and then, of course, this led us to have an important impact providing coordination spaces. We opened sectorial working tables. Of course, no clusters were activated after this, but there was a specific requirement for actors to have a space to gather and to see what actions were done and to planify together. So we open coordination tables to work on shelter, protection, education, on critical aspects of the response, health, and we offer that, and it's still working now. So actors have, and this is a thing that UNDAC delivered. After UNDAC left, they delivered all this to the UN system and to actors here, and they are still working on this. So this was important. Then information management, informing the world what was going on. You know, Mexico is a country that has very, very good relationships with other countries, and the world we had lots of pressure by donors, by lots of actors, international actors, to know what was going on here. So we provided a good hand on that, and then of course, as I mentioned, the national response, the operational national response was something, but then we had a great opportunity to see how improve the systems and help government to improve the systems to establish request and reception of international assistance. This is very important because the seismic risk is still here. You know, on 2015 we have this massive Cat 5 plus Patricia hurricane, and now this. In fact, we are looking forward to see into the future and see how Mexico can still strengthen the capacities to respond, but as well to establish these mechanisms of international assistance coordination. So, and this led me to the last point, which is this experience could be as well add to the former experience that we have working in this kind of context. In fact, in 2016 was an UNDAC mission in Chile. As you know, for the desert of Atacama, floodings there, and as you know, Chile is a country as well that has lots of capacities and experience in terms of civil protection and disaster response and coordination. And then, well, I would say now Mexico. So I think that countries that are looking on contexts in which disasters are big and have big impact, but maybe that does not lead to an overwhelming of their capacities, but we have another value, in fact, and experience by Mexico reinforces that. They are very happy with the experience, they are very confident and trusty with the UN systems and UNDAC, and if something happens again, they are not going to hesitate to call us again and to provide a hand, even though it's not a cataclysm or a big disaster. So it's interesting in terms of the added value, I think. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now you mentioned preparedness. You mentioned UNDAC. I think you're going to tell me a bit about what the activities were. Of course, this was an earthquake, so I am assuming that a lot of the learning and testing also relates back to the International Search and Rescue Advisory Group, INSARAG. Maybe tell us a bit also about how some of the work of INSARAG in the Americas, which has been very active, how that has sort of fed into this emergency response, but and I guess also how this response will inform maybe the work of INSARAG and the USAR community in the Americas.
Yes. Oh, well, great question. I will just move forward then to the next slide because it leads me exactly to the USAR coordination aspect. In fact, you know, Mexico has this tradition of sending relief to other countries. Since 1930, they do that. And every time there is a disaster, they send assistance, and they send, if necessary, search and rescue teams. They have lots of experience on that. And now Mexico is going to chair the INSARAG Americas platform. So they are pretty invested on that. They are very active on this end, and this had an impact, of course. They know INSARAG, they know very well the methodologies, and that of course helped with the USAR mobilization that came to Mexico. So, just if I may, I will just very fast go through these three aspects of the terms of reference, and I was mentioning the USAR coordination. At the end, you know, Mexico City has 38 collapsed buildings and 38 sites in which USAR teams were working there. And then the other state that was pretty badly affected, the state of Morelos, had 19 of them. At the end, 11 national user teams, official, besides the Navy and the federal police and the Army that have specialized teams on that sense, mobilized, and 9 international teams were working hand with the government. The thing is that this mobilization was done in bilateral basis, most of the cases, and that's it. I'm going to mention a little bit further what aspects of user coordination were challenged and where were the opportunities, but it was an intense interaction, and in these terms, the experience of Mexico and the knowledge of INSARAG methodologies were very useful. It wasn't perfect, and I will mention why from our point of view, and that all this was framed into a national approach of incident and command system, which was very interesting to see in real time and see how the international way of working was plugging into this approach in Mexico. But then I was mentioning in terms of coordination and our assistance to the UN system and humanitarian actors, and I will say, private sector was another big player here, and still is for reconstruction and recovery. But civil society had a massive mobilization of resources, and this was interesting to see and to provide assistance on that sense. Then I was mentioning about information management, what we did. Of course, we produced lots of the usual products that we do as UNDAC. But the interesting thing here that they were pretty welcomed by the government, and as far as we were seeing the national secrets and sharing information with them, and as the response evolved, our methodologies and our way of working were considered by the national response. That they improved a lot the national reports, the national secrets, and the analysis, of course. And they now have a good understanding how the international system works as well. So this was interesting. And then, of course, I think that it will open further, and now we're working with government and seeing how we can strengthen their capacities on that and bring more experience of other countries here within the region to improve that. And well, I mentioned some aspects of the humanitarian assistance that were mobilized, and Mexico has lots of strengths, but we saw that besides the great mobilization of civil society, we saw that they are not very familiarized with shelter, because they never had the need to. Of course, we had lots of disasters here, an impact, but not sheltering this amount of people. So we had a great opportunity there to advise on standards and to visit shelters, to see what were the conditions, and not only us, because of course on all these visits that we have done, other UN agencies were with us, NGOs, even though we have a very close contact with donors, USAID, JICA, and then of course we saw this opportunity. If something happens again like this, now we are going to be much more, I will say, the national response might be much more knowledgeable and implementing international standards, because now they have more experience on that sense. So, well, I have a slide on challenges, but well, you tell me. If I go on to that?
No, it's good. It's good. It's interesting. Why don't you continue with that? Because you already mentioned a little bit of some lessons and challenges. So continue with that.
Yes.
I'm all ears, and I'm sure all the rest of.
Thank you. I think that we have 10 minutes now or so, but I would like to stop here a bit, because we have lots of lessons learned, and we have a big list of challenges that we would like to share with you. But I decided to share with you the 6. I think that they are the most important. The first, I mentioned that this earthquake, the second one on the 19th of September, happened at the same time at the General Assembly. This helped us to mobilize very, very fast. The teams, the decision making was done very fast and at the highest level. In fact, we have the Mexican Foreign Minister talking to the Secretary General, talking to Mr. John Lowcock, Mark Lowcock in New York, tete-a-tete, and deciding what to do and advising real time at the highest level. This was very useful because I remember we had this video which we received very fast, in which the Foreign Minister at the General Assembly, a few hours after the earthquake, told the world, yes, we will require your assistance, and this, of course, facilitated a lot of things. But I wonder, what if, what if it wasn't that case? What if this high-level actor was disconnected? Of course, we have the really, really good relationships with Mexico. My regional office had a very, very strong footprint here, as in other countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. But I wonder still if this was different, if things were the same in terms of time. Because the UNDAC mission was here on the 20th, the user teams were still starting to arrive very, very fast, and this was a thing. So now this is a lesson learned as well, but I will mention that later on. Then the challenges I just mentioned, the mobilization of user teams was done sometimes in bilateral basis, which we didn't have a lot of visual on that. And you know, there's always this tension of teams that arrive into country without being called, and all these normal things that happen in big emergencies. And this was a challenge mostly for the national authorities. We were seeing that in real time and very closely, and we saw how it works in terms of that. You know, politically speaking, and all this, what pressure national authorities are in terms of this. And then I mentioned that the incident and command approach is important. I mean, this is a decision that every country has how to work. Our job is not to bring more complexity into the response, and I think that we did a good job advising without creating more difficulties on that sense. But I will say this approach could be complemented with others, and this is an interesting experience, and I think that it will be important to document that, to see how the incident and command approach could be strengthened with others, with other approaches. And then the international expressions of solidarity other than user teams. Of course, Mexico started to receive planes and things that they didn't require any other emergency. But it was interesting to see again how to request, how to accept, how to control the expression of solidarity that countries that love Mexico, that wanted to help, even though this could be create even more challenges for them in terms of coordination. The information flow and situation analysis were a challenge as well, because you know Mexico is a federation. For the colleagues that are online that are not from this region, maybe I would just explain that Mexico has a political system similar to the United States. The Mexican Republic is composed by 32 states, which are sovereign, which have their own constitutions, but the governors might not be from the same political color than the federal government. So the information flow, since there were lots of states involved in this response, was a challenge because they have different way of working, different methodologies. Sometimes the information flow didn't reach the federal. They have lots of challenges, and of course us, because the information that we had was mostly official, and of course lots of information from the field, from our missions to the field, and from partners. But this structure, political structure, and way of being administratively speaking organized was a challenge. So this, we are going to work with Mexico on how to improve this, but it was a challenge. And then the last two things, and I would like to take a little bit time to explain this. The mobilization of civil society in the social media issue. I think that this is one of those things that are going to be recalled for a very long time in Mexican response, and I think that is a good lesson learned as well for other emergencies. The role of social media here was huge because and I remember the first maps that I got from collapsed buildings were done by civil society, with photos, uploading that, getting organized very fast, managing information, and reporting from not only from collapsed buildings, but with localities, communities that were affected. They sent photos calling for relief, and then the civil society respond to that. And I remember when the first reports of our UNDAC mission in Morelos, visiting the most impacted zone after Mexico City, which I would like to recall. Mexico City was the most impacted zone, and for that reason we were as UNDAC here, but then we moved fast to Morelos to see what was going on. They told me, look, we never saw this. In fact, were trucks and trucks and trucks aligned, traffic jams because of the mobilization of the relief sent by the civil society. And this presented a challenge for the national coordination, and this presented a challenge as well for the response itself, because how to stock all this, how to coordinate it, because it's not only about food and things that with time go wrong, but as well for medication. All this, the management of medication was a huge issue, and here I think that we are going to have as well great opportunities to work with government to how to have this lesson learned and to reinforce all this and to bring this story to the world. And because if other countries that have this capacity of mobilization and resources of civil society like Mexico, this would happen again. I mean, we will have a great opportunity to see how to improve this as well.
That's great. Okay, and so plenty of challenges, and I think you're mentioning a couple that we tend to see in other emergencies as well. So what were some of the lessons learned? You already mentioned a couple. Let's take a couple minutes to look at some of the lessons already learned. I know it's fresh, and probably the government is and responders are taking the next couple of months to look into that. But let's already hear what you're seeing.
Well, I was still thinking on that. In fact, I have three ideas here. I talked of some others previously, but we are planning now an exercise, lessons learned exercise within the UN system. UN agencies started already to do that as well. We have a great experience. We don't want to miss this opportunity to have this. But in terms of general. So the big lessons learned from what I can spot is, good relationships pay. I mean, it's not because I'm here. I mean, it could be someone else. But the footprint that OCHA has here was very, very important. The footprint that the UN system has here is very, very important as well, and the good relationship with Mexican authorities, with the civil society, with the humanitarian partners. Even though we didn't respond from several years together, this was very important because we had time to prepare. Maybe not as much as we would like to, but we knew each other. We had good understanding, and this allowed us to work very, very well. A great RC, I will say, the resident coordinator here, a man with great experience working on disasters. This is the same RC that requested this UNDAC mission in Chile last year. So great coincidence in terms of that, and this, of course, promoted a good understanding a good, I will say, construction of the mission and implementation of the mission, and now the follow-up, because we are going to work well and in really good terms in terms of what we could improve together, both internally, because I will say it was a great lesson as well for the UN system as UNDAC as well, and for the countries and the partners here in country. Then I will say the other point is very important. We talk a lot about UNDAC and our mission. Our mystic, how could I say any mystic, I will say, what we do, what we are meant to do, what our spirit. But I will say adaptability and flexibility are very important. Every disaster is different, of course, but then we have a very, I will say, a dimension of work, a different dimension of work here in this kind of context, in which it's important to not be afraid of innovate and to find the ways to deliver good quality systems, good quality services. And it's not only for Mexico, it could be applied to other regions in the world. And I think that this is a great lesson learned. I think that this experience is going to add to that, to add to the discussion of that. So next week I'm traveling to Ecuador, to Guayaquil, with FCSS and UNDAC and INSARAG to talk at this regional meeting for UNDAC and INSARAG on all this, and I'm looking forward to do that and to continue strengthening our capacities to do that. Not only adapt and be flexible with that no sense. I mean, I think that with this we show that we can have a strong added value in this context. Then, of course, led me to the last point, which is sometimes a very conservative mindset will say, well, an UNDAC mission in Mexico, why? I mean, does this really make any difference? Besides what I just mentioned, Mexico is not going to forget this. It's something that when we are thanked, when my team the government was very kind of saying goodbye to my team with the military band, with the red carpet, as all the other rescue teams, the USA teams. But this illustrated the appreciation that they have for the mission, even though we were not search and rescue teams or national search and rescue. It was a UN team that appears in all the videos and the communication that the government does. In 1985, because of that time, well, there's some track of what the UN did and the international community, but I think that now Mexico is going to keep this on the records of the history, and then you don't listen to me? You can listen, you can hear me. Okay, there you go.
You're good.
Okay, so specifically speaking of Mexico, this is going to be there, and that is going to promote further cooperation and further collaboration if necessary. And I will say, going beyond that, and even though having much more impact, nowadays you know that multilateralism is being criticized. It's a global trend. But then there are countries that are still defending that, and they are still defending multilateralism as a solution for the world global challenges. And Mexico, I heard that already by the Mexican president, by the Mexican foreign minister. This kind of examples brings into the light the necessity of keeping up multilateralism as an option and to engage in that. So Mexico is starting to advocate with this experience on that sense too. So I think it's very, very important. So that's it.
Great. No, great presentation, Juan Pablo. Thanks, and thanks also for raising your last point, putting these things in a bigger perspective of multilateralism and dealing with global solutions or local problems, but that need bigger solutions that sometimes one or two agencies or governments can provide. So really, that's really quite inspirational. that we've seen lots of photos on Facebook and the internet about the disaster and the team. So that for those who want to see that, that's easily available. I'm going to open up for some questions. I'm sure there are questions. Otherwise, I will definitely have a couple as well. But let's see after this inspirational talk by Juan Pablo, what some of the questions are. I think we have, I'm not sure how many people we have online, but at least 25 or 30. Anyone, any questions for Juan Pablo? And you can give them by the chat function, and then we will, I think I will raise them, or I will mention them to Juan Pablo.
Thank you, thank you.
Anyone already questions? Otherwise, I will have one or two maybe. Because I think one thing you mentioned was the opportunity to innovate, even in an event like that. Maybe not a huge catastrophic disaster, but definitely a tragedy and an emergency. And you said, you know, we have to always be adaptable and flexible, but also are able to innovate. That would, if you could give an example of that would be of my interest. You also mentioned the massive influence of the civil society and people participating in the response. And I'm wondering how did you or how did the government sort of deal with that in terms of coordination of that in a country like Mexico, in a city like Mexico, I guess, where there's so many people responding.
Yes.
If there's no other questions, let's take that one.
Well, I will join them because in terms of innovation and mobilization of civil society, I think that this is a thing that requested us to innovate in terms of coordination, because, you know, there's now lots of actors and well-organized actors that respond, and in a very, very timely fashion and in good quality. For example, I will say the mobilization in Mexico City, besides the official mobilization as Mexico City's government and as federal government, civil society was very, very well organized, and that, of course, brings you to the light the necessity to bring people together and to because they are seeking coordination spaces, they have lots of resources, and so on. This creates a challenge as well. I mean, innovating in this, it could be as well somehow tricky, because civil society could be as well bad organized, and for example, we have lots of issues with social media and things that difficultated a lot the response. And I remember some rumors of people being caught on the rubble and sending messages that were retweeted or resent by social media, and this created lots of issues in terms of how to direct the relief. So I will say first, I will say the Mexican government did a great job coordinating the response. They were in control, they were in doing their best, and they did a great job. But this massive mobilization of civil society posed a great problem for them, because there was people all over the place that were the working sites, in fact, for the collapsed buildings were full of people trying to help, and of course you have to help the professionals to work. So in terms of search and rescue, this was an issue, but as well in terms of the mobilization of trucks and medication and specialized volunteers in terms of medics, and though there were too many people trying to help, and this posed a great trouble for the national authorities. So I think that we should innovate in terms of communication with communities. this is a very, very important thing to consider. We should innovate and being more precise, more precise, to innovate in the use of social media in emergencies. The International Federation of the Red Cross brought recently a great guidance on that. But I think that we should still working and still work and find how to strengthen this, because this is going to be more and more a situation that we have to face, I would say, just to mention an example.
Yeah. Okay, and so actually I received a question from Caillou Orellana. Caillou, thanks for that, which is related to that. And his or her question is, can social media information collection considered to be necessary with specialized personnel? The searching, collecting, filtering, reporting to identify response gaps or capacity. Is that something that requires specialized
I will say
capacity?
Yes. I really hesitate because this is a great challenge when thing, and thank you for the question to our colleague. When mostly in earthquakes, you are looking for from the first after you see that your family is alright and that you are available to work, and you start to gather information and start reporting what is going on. Now is one of the first sources of information, and the challenge of this, that you cannot just go around picking everything that is there, because you don't know if this is reliable. I think that we need professionals to help us with this analysis. Much information. I mean, it's a great amount of information to be managed in a very short period of time. And this, I got the assistance from my office here, and lots of volunteers that people will volunteer to help us to do this. Give us a good hand, because like this we started to see what was the scale of the emergency, what was the scope of the emergency, and this gave us very valuable information to get the sense of what was going on, basically on the first hours of the earthquake. And then, of course, maybe it changes through time. The role of media then shifts a bit, but I will say for an earthquake, and the first 5 hours, it's very, very important. And then for follow-up as well, humanitarian actions and assistance too. To monitor that. For example, we have
there's a follow-up question actually on that from Mercy Maniala. I think OCHA West Africa office. Which is okay. So it's about social media and access to information. Were there issues in terms of how to manage and triangulate this kind of information and ensure that you don't act on fake news, which is becoming more common? Did you have that?
Yes, we have that. And there was, as I mentioned, one of the great challenges. We had reports of buildings that were collapsed. That's an example from social media, and then I remember several examples in which the national authority went to verify that, and in fact there was fake information. Even though photos of buildings that didn't existed in Mexico. I think they took photos from, I don't know, Google or something, and I really wonder why people can do such a thing. I mean, how could this be possible? I mean, it's very, you can see the reach of some people that, for reasons that I don't understand, can do such a thing. And rumors about people being caught on the rubbles, asking to be saved, assisted, and then even though with names and exact location, and then no one that with that name lives there or is there even. So things like that were practically speaking, as some examples of the danger of this. So very important to triangulate, very important to verify information, but for that you need a team, you need capacities to do so. So I think that it led me to my last comment, which of course I need to have to work on that, to how to use this in a good fashion, to build capacities, to create I don't know teams to help you with this, and of course reduce the danger of having these kind of things that could complicate the things even more.
Yeah, no, great. There's a lot of questions, so we're not going to be able to answer them all because we only have a couple minutes left. There's a very specific question from Nassim, who is a new UNDAC admin officer, I think, who says very informative and good for me as I'm new with UNDAC. My question is if there were any administrative challenges and how did you or others resolve that? And then there is our group, a couple. And then there was a question from Anna Maria saying, could you please tell us more about the level of preparedness of the Mexican government and civil protection, specifically in information management, in terms of training, tools that are in place? And do you think that this experience with UNDAC will help them to improve the preparedness in information management? I think a lot of it is about information. Then let me give you a third question so you can think about it.
I will start writing now,
which is around maybe, so given that you have so many people, too many people on scene, this is from Brad Sims, do you have recommendations for better coordination from non-INSARAG specialized teams? So I guess non-INSARAG classified teams that were there in the coordination.
Could you repeat the first question?
The first question was whether there were any administrative challenges.
Okay. Okay. Great. I will start by that one. Great question. We know that an UNDAC mission and any mission in terms of humanitarian response require logistics and all this. You can plan whatever you want, but if you don't have that logistical side, the admin support, nothing is going to happen. So for us, it's very, very important to get that a sense of that and to have great support on that. In the case of this UNDAC mission, I will say at the beginning, I was considering having an admin officer because it's a great help. I mean, you are running around doing lots of stuff, but it's very specific. You have lots of requirements. It's there for logistics. You have to have someone that manages the funds and things like that. In fact, we had a chance here in Mexico City, and this is another great exception. I want to say exceptional. I know for other previous UNDAC experiences working with other administrations of UN, Mexico has a very strong UNDP office. And we didn't need any admin support because we have the whole admin team and operations team of the UNDP working with us. I mean, it was great. We were treated as prince and princesses. We were very, very well supported. But this is a lesson as well. What happened if we are deployed in a country that this service cannot be provided? And here it's very important to mobilize with us. I'm a specialist on administration. It happened to me in other contexts, not because the UN system were not strong, but because we are very busy doing all the critical work as my missions in Haiti or the Horn of Africa. But here we have that support, and it facilitated a lot of tasks. But I think that this is an analysis that should be done previous to the deployment. Very important as the security issue too. So I will say, previous to the deployment of an UNDAC team, have a good analysis on admin, what kind of admin support the UNDAC mission will have is very, very important. And then for the second question from Ana Maria, IM and another level of preparedness. Well, Mexico is a country that has lots of experience with disasters. Maybe not at this scale. And I will say after this disaster, they are going to improve a lot the reporting and the situation analysis, and this open, as I mentioned, on the lessons learned and the IM side, a space to work with them on trainings, to work with them on strengthening that side of their work. This is for the national response, because I heard that this was specific to the civil protection, if I didn't understand wrong. And there's lots of countries that have lots of experience on that here in this region. Great quality reports, and I think that Mexico is going to take this as an opportunity to strengthen that side. And of course, not only the reporting itself and the analysis, but the flow of information. This highlighted the necessity of Mexico to have much more stronger protocols, stronger agreements, I will say, or frameworks in which the information flow runs well between the local, because we have municipalities here at the local level, then the states at the statal level, that's the next structure that comes in if the previous gets overwhelmed, and then the federal level. So they have 3 levels, in fact, to coordinate information, the information flow. This is a lesson that Mexico is going to take into account, and then we would like to help to establish this. And then how to improve best coordination with not INSARAG. INSARAG is, and
I think the question was with non-INSARAG.
Non-INSARAG, that's it.
Yeah, non-INSARAG, so the ones that are not... I understand much more now, which is the importance not of the classification, which is very important, of course, for international operations, is the national standards. Non-INSARAG is important. INSARAG is important. Non-INSARAG is important as well in terms of if they have a methodology, national methodology that considers the INSARAG methodology. It's great. I think this is the outcome of so many emergencies. This is the outcome of so many lessons learned and good practices that countries are seeing now, and in this region mostly, and Mexico, and I'm going to speak specifically in Mexico, to finish with the national standards, inspired and strengthened with INSARAG, of course. So this is important, because it's not only about sending teams that knows the methodology and knows how to work with other countries in terms of international response, but it's as well how do you work with these teams when they come into the country if needed. So this is I don't know if I answered the question. I think you did.
Mm-hmm.
I think you did, and I think it's a very important point, and I know that in the Americas it's sort of leading the way in terms of setting national standards for national first responders and USAR teams. And I'm sure you mentioned, what is it, next week there's the meeting of the regional INSARAG and meeting. Yeah. So I'm sure that will be an important topic and a very relevant as this emergency showed again. Okay, I'm afraid I have to disappoint people that have still questions, but because we are 4 past the hour, so that means we had a very interesting presentation from Juan Pablo. I want to thank you. It has been very interesting and very inspirational as well, with some very specific lessons that you mentioned, but also some very big lessons that we've heard on multilateralism, classification, and the importance of national coordination. So I want to thank you very much. For those of you that have still questions for Juan Pablo, or in that respect for FCSS or on INSARAG, please post that on the Facebook page. We will pick them up there. If it's for Juan Pablo, we'll forward them to Juan Pablo and he will reply to them. If it's for us here, then we will answer to you as well. So please do that. This is, after all, a network event. And we appreciate your attendance. Juan Pablo, thanks a lot again. I know you'll be traveling soon. You'll be seeing Gintare and other colleagues in Chile, if I'm not mistaken, or Ecuador. Chile? Ecuador. So safe travels there. Thank you very much again. Normally you get a handshake and maybe a T-shirt when you're here with me, but you're not, so I'm just going to do that virtually. We will be posting this on Facebook and on YouTube. The next episode will be next month. We have not confirmed yet exactly the topic nor the date, but you will hear about that very soon through the regular channel. So keep looking out for that. It's been a pleasure, Juan Pablo. It's been an honor, and I hope we see each other soon, not in an emergency, but somewhere else, hopefully. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Juan Pablo.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Nadia and Sarah as well, for the support. And see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.